All right, welcome back to the program. Joining me right now, my guest, Honorable Sergius Ogun, member House Committee on Local Content, Downstream as well as Upstream, Federal House of Representatives is with me here, right here in the studio. Welcome, Honorable, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Mustapha
Wahab is an investment analyst, that's oil and gas at the Chapel Hill, Denham. Is joining us from Lagos via Zoom. Hello, Mustapha, and thanks for joining us. Okay, Mustapha, can you unmute your audio so that we can hear you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry. I was saying good morning to you too, Nancy, and I'm very excited to be with you this morning.
Thank you for joining us. Let's start with the Honorable. Honorable, I said in my intro, is this going to be Uhuru? Because I would say that a lot of Nigerians are tired of hearing the petroleum industry bill, stuff around oil and gas, stuff around the fiscal side, the governance side, and all of that. I remember that perhaps we started hearing stuff about PIB since 2008, if I'm not mistaken, around that. But this PIB right now, the president presented this PIB in September, I think precisely 20th of September. The public hearing has started at the Senate. What should we expect? Yours is going to start tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
On Wednesday, yes.
Now, we should expect to pass the bill. Yeah, because the truth is, this PIB journey started since year 2000. And the good news is that we've had the likes of the Senate president now. He's been in the National Assembly since then. And of course, since 2003, I think the current speaker has been in National Assembly. So they are very familiar with this bill. So now they are in the hands of affair, and I believe that not just the fact that we need to pass a bill like yesterday, but they have seen it all, and they are determined, working with the executive to pass it. But we have lost a whole lot as a nation because we have not passed this bill. When you expect people to come and invest in your country, would they not know how much they can take out? Would they not need to know how much they're going to earn from that investment? So in the last 4 years, 2015, 2019, over 70 billion was invested in Africa into oil and gas.
Only $70 billion.
$70 billion. Only 3 billion came to Nigeria. And yet we are supposed to be the largest producer of oil in Africa. So what does that tell you? The investors are going elsewhere. Suddenly we are hearing about Mozambique. ExxonMobil investing $37 billion. Some years ago, you didn't know whether Mozambique even had a barrel of oil. So we need to pass this like yesterday, but the thing I don't like is when, sometime last year, the Minister of State Petroleum said it's going to be passed last year. Then now the Senate President said it will pass by first quarter. There are a whole lot of issues that you need to sit down with the oil majors and even the independents to resolve.
What do you think are the issues that have been dragging us for so long a time? Because quite a whole number of issues. The host communities will say, okay, we don't want the 2.5% equity stake, we want 10% stake. The oil majors will say, no, this environment is not favoring us. So what are the issues that we need to really attend to this time?
There are a whole lot. There need to be more incentives for the oil producers. Yeah, because like I said, why are they not investing here? Well, beside the fact that we don't have a law today, you know. But you also have to give them incentives. Now we are talking about Mozambique. Look at Equatorial Guinea here. Today, they have oil almost everywhere around us. And people are giving you license to go and operate. And saying, look, forget about the signature bonus for now. We'll talk about that later. So we have gone beyond that era of saying you have to do X, Y, Z, and people don't have anywhere else to go to. They have places to go to. So we have to look at the countries in Africa who we are competing with and say, okay, fine. If these guys leave, what are we going to do with the oil? They have incentives to go to other countries. So can we match that? So we should be looking into that now. So that's what I'm saying. For somebody to just say, we'll pass this law, we'll pass this bill by first quarter, I don't think it's going to be that easy. Because we can pass a bill that is still useless. And at the end of the day, the investors will not put their money here. I'll give you an example. I was chatting with some guys in Ghana, the ones that put their law together, their PIB together, which they took here, work on it under 6 months. They passed it. And under 6 months again, after passing that bill, they started amending it. So what they told us then, during the OTC, was that they accommodated everybody. Even the lawmakers were the ones pressuring them to present the bill.
They took
a chunk of it from here, whatever we had before, and they worked on it. You see? So we don't expect to have a perfect bill, but bring a bill where you have to consult with people. What the Ghanaians told us was, look, they were not arrogant about it. They reached out to everybody. When it was some few days to send it to the parliament, the environmental people came and others and communities. Say they met with them. They said, okay, fine, this bill is almost going to pass, but we'll take on board most of the things you have told us. And they saw the bill through and they started amending thereafter. So we cannot have a perfect bill from day one, but we must consult extensively. If you pass a bill that the host communities are not happy with, you know what will happen? They'll go back to the trenches. You will not even get a barrel. So you have to engage with them. Whatever you are giving them, what happens to the state government? How is that fund going to be managed? Same thing with the oil producers. They must be comfortable to invest here. You cannot arbitrarily talk about taxes. It has to be something they are comfortable with. Like I said, we have suffered enough. $70 billion in Africa, and the largest producer of oil. We are talking about only, 4% or what?
And now there's the African Continental Free Trade Area. So it's not about being the largest market anymore.
We must consult extensively. Okay.
Let me bring in Mustapha here. You've had the Honorable speak to me about what you've been thinking, especially oil and gas is on your table. You look at these things every day. What are some of the concerns for you?
The Honorable said it all, right? I think it's about time we pass the PIB. So I think one of the key things we like about this new version is the fact that, the bill will now sort of unbundle the current structure of NNPC, where you now have a single regulator, regulating the upstream side, and another single regulator regulating the mid and the downstream side, right? In the past, if you speak with rig operators, what you see is that they've suffered significantly, just basically to operate in Nigeria, alone, right? But once the bill is passed, what we'll see is that regulatory clarity is going to be there. Right now, after the passing of the bill, you now sort of know where to go for your licenses, where to go for your permit, and also for renewals. So in simple language, I think passing this PIB is more or less an ease of doing business in the oil and gas industry, which would essentially answer the question of how the government should relate, to the operators in the industry. But I think one of the major impact of passing this PIB, like I said, is regulatory clarity, and that's essentially what would boost, investors' confidence. The Honorable has said, most of it, right? And you would agree with me, Nancy, that regulatory uncertainty has been one of the key, problem of the industry, at least over the last 20 years, and the impact has essentially slowed down, investment, right? I think the sad story about the PIB is not just the fact that over the last 20 years it has languished in limbo. I think the real story is that every additional delay essentially compounds that sort of problems and worsens the losses in the sector, right? In-house in Chapel Hill, what we've done is that over the last couple of years, we've estimated that close to 200 billion has been lost in planned investment, and obviously, projected return on investment, right? Other people think, the number might be too, conservative, but whatever the case is, what we think is that a good portion of the recent economic problem that we're facing in Nigeria would have been avoided if relevance opportunity had been utilized in the oil and gas sector.
I think one of the, let me come back to you, Honorable, and I'll come back to you, Mustapha, in a bit. I think one of the sticky points that has been in the PIB is how can we make the NNPC, which is the state oil company, an efficient and commercially viable entity. What we have right now is that we have a regulator, we also have an operator in the market. If you take a look at perhaps what's happening elsewhere, I think even for Saudi Aramco, I saw the amount of money that Saudi Aramco made, was it last year? Also, okay, the year before COVID. Yes, the year before COVID. Trillions, and I'm like, what? It wants to be, just a small portion to be sold of Saudi Aramco. So how can the NNPC be made commercially viable, not just commercially viable, but an efficient one?
NNPC is the elephant in the room when we are talking about this PIB. After, like my brother said, you have to give confidence to the investors. It's a good thing you mentioned Saudi Aramco. I think what the route they took is corporatization. When they went public, it became the largest company in the world. Even what they even when what they published was dodgy, their reserve, people still pumped in money. I remember Ibe Kachuku said that when he was GMD and Minister of State, Petroleum, that we're going to go public, NNPC will go public in 2017 or so. I think thereafter they started throwing all manner of things at him.
Yes. I remember I interviewed him and I asked him when NNPC would go public and when and he answered me then. He said, Nancy, I'm no more in charge of NNPC. I've left as GMD. And I remember that was his answer.
Clause 53 of this present bill is talking about registration of NNPCL, NNPC Limited. And then he's talking about the shares will be, the company is going to be wholly owned by NNPC. That is not acceptable. We should be towing the Saudi route. It should be private, public. Just give a little percentage to the government. No, being the government. But a station whereby the government has majority and all, it will not work. I have always given the example of NLNG. See, today, the majority shareholders there are the private people. They are investors. They have 51% as against the Nigerian government 49%. So they always manage that sector. The share will always produce because they have the largest share among the investors. Shell, Ajip, and Total. I think Shell has about 29% or 25%. So they always produce the MD. But guess what? The strength is with the board. And till we begin to run NHPC like that, nothing will come out. You can begin to do this bill every year. Nothing will come out. You must take away that power from NNPC. Because guess what NNPC is used for today in this country? Extra budgetary. There are so many things that are not in the budget. You just go to NNPC and take money. If you run your business like that, it will collapse in hours. But why should we? Oil is our mainstay. And the national oil company is being run like a mushroom company. So if we must get anything out of it, NNPC as it stands today cannot return to this present bill. Otherwise, it will just be a joke.
If we take a look at, Mustapha, let me come back to you. I'm taking a look at some of the provisions of the bill, and I'm seeing establishment of Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. Perhaps you would also comment on it in a bit, since you're in the Committee of Downstream and Upstream. Establishment of Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, incorporation of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, just like you said earlier. What else again? The domestic gas obligations. Are these notable provisions?
Nancy, please, can you repeat the question? I didn't.
Okay, I am asking that there are some provisions that I've seen in this new PIB that would include the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, incorporation of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. So many acronyms there. Are they notable provisions, and the domestic gas obligations, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, Nancy, I think is a wonderful provision. I mean, the Honorable has said it clearly that, you see. Okay,
Mustapha, we'll come back
Right.
to, okay.
Yeah, so,
Okay, we can hear you now because the network was freezing at a point. Go ahead, please, Mustapha. Okay, let me come back to the Honorable. I guess the network is frozen. Okay. So, Honorable, notable provisions, are they? Just like you said for the NNPCL. Yeah,
it's okay. The challenge we have with that is that is still going to be owned by government. That we should look into that. It should be private, public. The regulatory bodies, the upstream, then the downstream, midstream, and it's okay because now you have said there that talking about issuing licenses for blocks, maybe it will go to the upstream regulatory body. Yeah, it's okay, but that's not different from what's happening now because DPR and all will be collapsed into the upstream. That's not different because if it present day when you are going to get a license, you go through a DPRO, they will do all that and then send the final recommendation to the minister. But now, it's no longer the minister, it's directly that body, the commission, that will be doing that. But as we know, it's going to be the voice of Esau and the voice of Jacob and the hand of Esau. Because they cannot do all that and just and just go ahead and issue those licenses. They must still get approval from the top. So independence is the key word here. Those commissions should be independent to make those decisions and stand by them without interference. That takes us back to the way NNPC will be constituted. So they should just remain there as on top of the board. Like, again, like I said, NLNG. Today, the government produces the chairman of NLNG. But what power does that chairman have? The power is with the board, the investors. So that is where we want NNPC to be if we must get something reasonable out of this PIB. Otherwise, we'll have a bill that is going to be a dude bill and nobody will come. We need the confidence of the investors that will come bring the money into the economy. Until we come out straight. Again, we talk about the Saudi experience. The Saudi is a monarchy, the system. That we have a constitutional democracy. And we cannot come out straight and say, okay, this is what we are going to do to enhance the growth of this country. We leave everything to NNPC, and yet NNPC is not even accountable to the National Assembly. Section 7 sub 5 of
Are you
the NNPC
seeing a
Act.
bit of that accountability changing and transparency? Because at least they've been releasing their results. I think they came to the National Assembly now with their budget and all of that. So are you
How
seeing...
many pages? How many pages?
Are you seeing... But at least they came.
Yeah, they have becoming. They have become in the
So
past.
would you say that the transparency has started, you know, that NNPC is showing goodwill now in terms of transparency?
No, they are not.
Or they should do more?
The PIB, to some extent, will solve some of that. Because most of those bills, most of those acts, Petroleum Act and other, will be repealed. Even the one amended in 2019, the deep offshore inland basin and production sharing contracts of 2019 that was amended, that all those ones will be repealed. And we will not have one bill. It's excellent. If you're talking about the gas, you know, now becoming domestic and all that one is excellent. Although the OPT, they have issues with that the oil producers and technical section, they have issues with that. Because if you look at NLNG, the contract, NLNG was not built for Nigeria. It was built mainly for export. But if we can use the gas here, why export? That's the question. So there are so many good things about this PIB, no doubt about that. But the point I'm making is we still need to do a whole lot of consultation. There's no need to do, to grandstand. Because this, like I said again, oil is our mainstay. I remember some years ago, the former president of Obasanjo said when he went to Cuba, he saw one large cow, and he was working with Fidel Castro, and Fidel Castro told him the gallons that cow produces in a day. And that was his reason for becoming the Minister of State, Petroleum Minister. Because he said, oil is our mainstay. I should know how much we are producing, I should know how much we are selling. Although that was a very lame excuse anyway. You are still the commander-in-chief, you appoint the ministers. They will report to you daily. You have an AM report or you have a PM report. You know? So the point that I'm making, if oil is our mainstay, and we must manage it to bring enough resources to run the country, should we allow things like that to be happening in this country? To me, the answer is no. You know? So we should consult widely, again I will say that, consult widely, reach out to people we need to reach out to, so that we have a bill that will build confidence in the investors and they can bring their money in here to invest. Okay,
now that we're talking about investors, Mustapha, I can see that you're back, and let's proceed with this question, because it seems that Honorable has answered the question I had asked you, so we shouldn't go into that. But let's look at the fiscal framework of perhaps the new PIB and how it would attract investment. Speak to me about what you've been hearing from investors, even would-be investors, or as you watch this market on a day-to-day basis, what are you really hearing and what are you seeing? What are these investors saying that if Nigeria had done this, perhaps we can have so amount of investment coming to the country yearly?
Okay, fantastic, Nancy. So I think, I was going to say that the government is not aware of this, but obviously, because the Honorable has said, a significant amount of things that is supposed to be driving huge investments in the industry. So it just basically means that even the government are aware of what they're supposed to do, right? But what we know for sure is that, Nigeria's oil and gas industry, does not exist in isolation, right? It just basically operates in an environment that is essentially shifting in favor of countries with the most competitive landscape, right? So I think that has made it imperative for the government to sort of pass the PIB almost immediately, right? So I believe that would answer the question around, the relevance of the bill. So I tell you what we know for sure right now is that a host of FIDs are still pending on several offshore projects that are, expected to create additional capacity to, Nigeria's, crude oil production, and obviously attract up to the tune of 100 million in investment. So just so I put it in a better context in terms of comparison, yes, the Honorable mentioned that Ghana recently passed, the Petroleum Production Exploration Law, and which is obviously true, right? What we heard from the from the energy minister at the time was that, the bill would sort of create an environment that would attract, investment, right, in Ghana. And so to put in a proper context, right, at current rate of production, right, Ghana's oil production will probably eclipse that of Nigeria on per capita basis, by 2024. So it just become imperative for things to change almost immediately, such that, investments start to look the way of Nigeria. Because, I mean, if you check the numbers over the last couple of years, you've seen massive inflows of investment in oil and gas industry space. But people are not just looking at Nigeria, because I mean it's not really clear. It's not really clear what's the regulatory environment is in Nigeria. I said it earlier that if you speak to any rig operator in Nigeria, what you see is that it's a pain, to operate in the Nigeria's landscape, right? Today they get letters from PPRA, other time they get it from NDDC, and the next day from DPR, right? So what the bill is going to do is that it will create that sort of structure that whenever you are operating in, as far as the value chain is concerned, so you understand who your regulator is, so you know who you are, right? So if that's get out of the way, then that means that investors might start to look at Nigeria again.
Okay, Mustapha, let me still stick with you a bit. What do you think will be the role of the NDDC? So many acronyms, so I didn't really want to miss it. What do you think will be the role of the NDDC moving forward with the PIB and putting the host community involved? Because it seems that what we even saw a lot in the past few years around PIB has been perhaps more of the political nature, or how would I say it? Yeah, the politicization of all of this that is coming from a certain region and all of that. So how do you think that the issue of the NDDC and the host community should be addressed? Yesterday at a public hearing, they said, no, we will not want a 2.5%. Let's go for a 10% equity stake. So how do you think this should be addressed? With the NDDC that we saw the drama at the National Assembly, Honorable, I hope you were not there. Hold your mic, off your mic. Don't talk again. Stop it. We've not heard. It's actually not a laughing matter, but these are things that happen in our country, and we'll sleep and wake up and behave that everything is fantastic.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I think is that the government alone is trying to, restructure the entire industry by themselves, right? They are not, consulting, aggressively in the country, right? So I think that by the time they start to get the host involved, right, those people will spell out what they want, and then FGN will tell them, this is what we're able to give, and then we come together and get to some sort of position of a compromise, right? So what we're saying generally is that they need to consult widely. They need to understand the need of the host community, so that we move forward. Because like the Honorable, if you a bill that is not encompassing enough, it might not necessarily solve the issue that we're facing right now, right? So you need to get a sense what's the host.
Okay, Mustapha, the network it's not too good again. Let me come back to Honorable, and I hope that we can get to just before we end the program. The public hearing for the House starts Wednesday.
Yeah, tomorrow.
What are the expectations?
Well, on my side is, let's hear the people. That's the beauty about democracy. And that's the process of making laws. We should hear from the stakeholders. We should Okay, the community, they are critical stakeholders.
Are they going to be represented?
Yes, yes.
As in well represented, not political representation? These people that are being affected, that their communities are degraded, they can't farm, they can't... are they representatives from those people?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Most of them, they have different groups too. Then you have the New Pen, Pegasus group. Then you have the OPTS and all of them. So most of these are the stakeholders. They will all be there. So and it's good for us to hear them. Then because they have already submitted their memorandum. So let's collate all this, hear them speak, and then go into the inner chamber and work on the outcome of their presentation. So that's why I keep saying that we cannot grandstand when it comes to this. You must hear them. There must be a feedback to say, okay, from what you said the last time, this is what we are thinking of. So that consultation must be there before we come out with the final bill. I expect the host community to come out smoking tomorrow to say, look, yeah, because that's why I say the issues of if you give that money to a trust fund, how is it going to be managed? Is it just going to be some few people in the community that will pocket the money as usual, or you have people nominated from the federal government? Now, if it's still going to be only owned by NNPC. So those are some of the issues we would like to hear, and then, like I said, go back, chew them, and then come back again, proper consultation. Okay,
just find out what are your expectations on when the PIB should be passed? Because you said first quarter is late. What do you expect?
If it can be passed tomorrow, I don't mind.
Okay.
But the thing is, do proper consultation so that we have a good bill.
Okay. All right, that's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. I'm afraid we can't go back to Mustapha Wahab because of time. And okay, Mustapha, I can see you, so at least let me say goodbye properly, because the network was just, misbehaving. That's still one of the side effects. One of the things we've got to get right in the country. Thank you, Mustapha, for joining us. I've been speaking with Honorable Sergius Ogun, who is a member House Committee on Local Content, Downstream as well as Upstream, and Mustapha Wahab, an investment analyst, oil and gas, with the Chapel Hill, Denham. That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. I am Nancy Nnaji. Don't forget to be the best you can be and be the change you want to see. Wear a mask.